out and you bought the new Samsung S10. Has anybody bought it yet? It's not too grand. It's a little expensive. You can get it for $1,200. Is anybody planning on buying it? Yeah. Why would you get a Samsung? Some people, if you're going to buy an Android phone, I'm going to say Samsung's probably one of the better ones. It has a lot of great features, has some great cameras, better cameras than the iPhone XS. It has a better screen than the iPhone. So there's some advantages to it. But like the iPhone, how do you unlock, or one of the ways you can unlock the phone? How do I unlock it? Facial recognition. And so we think that's pretty secure, right? Oh, we can fool it with a video of the owner or a picture of the owner. Well, that doesn't mean very secure. So I don't think the facial recognition, and we've had the same issue with the iPhone and almost any of them doing facial recognition. Some companies, if you buy a laptop, one of the ways you can unlock it is with facial recognition. And we're not quite there, I think, ready to use this as a great model. Now, when I say that, the other thing that just came out the other day in some of my security news, the federal government says, hey, facial recognition is great, and we're going to put it in at least 50 public airports looking for suspected terrorists, people on the wanted list, those with other convictions. But if I can fool a phone, how many people you think are going to get picked up erroneously on facial recognition at an airport? Are we going to miss people that should be picked up? Yeah. So hopefully you don't look like any known terrorist, because that's going to get a little ugly pretty quickly. So let me close this one out. All right. Did you look up those dates of when you can enroll, Bailey? Okay. Never mind then. So we have a couple of things. So this week we're looking at, I know you guys all read over the holiday break, chapter 9, right? There you go. So those of you who had nothing better to do probably read this. So for the on-campus section on Wednesday, we will probably have a little, we'll call it attendance bonus quiz to make sure that you have read through this material. So the first thing we're going to talk about is more security. I know that's surprising. And we're going to talk about some really scary things that are happening right now. So you have a computer. Everybody in here has a computer. I've seen them. You guys almost all use them. When your computer first boots up, so whether you're using a Mac, because the Mac does the same thing, when that Mac restarts and it's got that little bar that comes across and the little apple, and it says, hey, I'm getting ready to boot, or when you do the PC in here and it starts up and it flashes up and says Asus or whoever it happens to be, and says, hey, I'm starting to boot up, that is either the older versions, we called it BIOS, and I still generically call it BIOS. Underneath your operating system, there is something that allows that computer to run. And it really has some programming code in it. It allows your computer to interface with all the devices. And we are now seeing that there are security issues with those BIOS chips. So they have to have some ability to have some programming. So if you want to do updates, for example, what's happening is there's some malware out there now that updates your BIOS or your UEFI, the other model of it. So there's a newer model called UEFI, that Unified Extensible Firmware. Again, very similar to BIOS. And it updates that for you. So you think, great, I got a virus. I'm going to wipe out my computer. I reformat the hard drive. Guess what? It's still there. And in fact, with some versions that we have ran into, there has been no way to get rid of it unless you remove the BIOS or the UEFI chip off your motherboard and replace it. And that's really not feasible for most people. So it can, in fact, you can think about, before we said, it's really not going to damage your hardware. This does. And some of these new malware pieces are damaging hardware. And they don't really care necessarily as much about your computer, but we're also seeing them being launched for servers. If I could put that on every server that Google uses, would that be a powerful tool? I could exploit a lot of credit card information. So we now see there's some secure boot methods that are also being created. So HP and some of these larger companies are trying to come up with methods to protect you a little better. So the order of how this actually, so the first thing on your computers when they turn on is that BIOS or that UEFI. It then goes out and it looks for what's called a master boot record. So it looks at that drive wherever it's stored and says, hey, I need, what am I going to boot to? And that's stored on the hard drives or your solid state drives, and that runs what's called the bootloader, which finally allows your operating system to run. And so up until a few years ago, we really didn't worry about any of these pieces back here. We thought they were pretty safe, and we said, well, if that operating system gets messed up, but what we've seen is these criminals and these people that want to exploit things, and quite frankly, what they're using is tools developed by state governments, NSA, in the case of our state, Chinese tools, Korean tools, other countries, and they're able to push this back. And now we're at the level of that BIOS. This is not just for your computer. Your phone works very nearly the same way. And they're now coming up with exploits for your phone. Because if I want to now get a hold of where people are using data, most people are using a mobile device, and we think our phones are secure. And they're not. And think about the amount of information we're putting on your phone, your computer. It's not secure like it used to be. So they have now got this idea that they're going to do a secure model where one of the terms you'll see is chain of trust. You may see secure boot. And in other words, they are starting with this idea that way back on that master boot record, way before that even on that BIOS, that we have some security checks in place. So Hewlett-Packard is one I've seen a lot of demonstrations on some stuff that they have, and hopefully that will alleviate some of that. But I think as soon as we come up with a solution, we're also going to have another problem. So we have that. We've also found that we don't even need to infect your computer to find out what's on it. Because every electronic device, whether it's your phone, whether it's your camera, actually emits a little bit of data. So it's got some electromagnetic data going on, and we figured out that we can steal some of that. So not only can we take over your keyboard or your mouse, but just by putting a receiver close to your computer, or close enough, we can actually pull up some data from it. So even though we say those systems like controlling Cooper Nuclear or what's called air-gapped, they're not on the internet, if I can get 20, 50, 100 feet away, or I can get a hold of the electrical connection that they're plugged into, I'm actually now able to pull data from them. It's frightening what we can do on that. Now, we've known some of this for a long time. So have you ever seen one of the computers and it's got a monitor that looked like the old style TV, the old tubes? Yeah, most of you have seen it. Those we could actually do really easily because those old tube style monitors, if you wanted to see what was on the screen of one of those, you could get another TV and actually dial that right in some cases and get a copy of what's on that image. They would radiate that much energy. But we're trying to figure out how we reduce these levels. And one of the biggest attackers in that, again, the NSA says, hey, we have ways we can get into this data, even though they're air-gapped systems. So now think about that. We've got nuclear power plants. We've got regular power plants. We've got this power grid we've got to protect. And we may be able to break into it without even physically touching it. Oops. Darn it, we have issues. So part of this is we have a supply chain issue. So we have to figure out how we protect those devices all the way from the time they are built on a manufacturing line. They're not infected all the way to the time till they get to you. Here's the problem. Where is every computer in the United States that you're looking at made? In most cases. You're actually right. China is one of the largest manufacturers in the world. If you have an iPhone, where's it made? So one of the factories, Apple is kind of an odd company. They don't actually own the factory that they send the plans to build. They use, for the most part, a company called Foxconn. Foxconn has a plant so large that's building iPhones, it has almost 1 million employees. Those employees lead such horrible lives, they have nets outside of everything above a second floor window because employees were committing suicide at several people a day. They will literally, they live and work in that factory. If they come up with a change on the iPhone, they will wake them up to go start making those changes in the middle of the night. It is horrible working conditions. But we don't always control every place of that. We don't have, Apple can't go in and monitor every aspect of that. So we have an issue in that supply chain. And Apple has actually put out things on iPods and the iPads that actually had viruses that would run on a Windows PC. You get your iPod, you plug it into your Windows PC, and now you've infected your device. And we're starting to see more of those issues. So that malware is being injected from the factory, and it's already infected before you can even see it. So you go buy a new phone, it's already sending out data. And in fact, there are some companies that are now being banned for use in the United States. So the largest cell phone company in the world, a company called Huawei, in terms of number of units, you're not buying those phones in the United States because the United States government says, hey, they are very dangerous, we don't like them. In fact, you'll see that their CEO has been arrested in Canada. There was just a report came out that the United States is threatening to withhold diplomatic communications with companies that you work with Huawei. So I think they're probably a decent phone. They have some decent features. We can't even get them. Does Huawei also make network equipment? I know of a lot of phone companies around that are using Huawei-built equipment in there. Great. All your data is being sent over this equipment that we don't know might not have a back door. So all your network equipment that's being built overseas, it's not built here. Quite frankly, we don't have the manufacturing capacity in the United States to build a lot of these things anymore, which is very sad. So we buy devices and they're already infected before we get them. So we have some issues with this. We know we need to figure out a way to secure the hardware, but now we also have more operating systems than ever before. So everything we see out there has an operating system on it. That network operating system, so there's a lot of them out there. When you buy a router, it's a computer. It really is a computer. It runs an operating system. So the bigger ones, something like Cisco. Cisco is the biggest network provider in the world. They have their own operating system. They're really all based off of something called Vieta, but they all have little tweaks on it. And so there's software that runs on that. We have software that runs our servers. So Apple has server software, not a lot of it out there right now. There is Linux software that runs most of the World Wide Web. There are Windows servers. Great. We have workstations, just like the computers you guys are all on. We also have those appliances. So most of you have a video game. Most of you have some form of a camera system that you're going to encounter on a daily basis. So we see those happen all over the place. The other ones I'll lump into that is these Internet of Things devices that we all have. Most of you at this point probably have an Alexis or a Google Home or an Apple, whatever their version is. Those also have an operating system. Great. And we're finding out we can infect all of those. And I can guarantee everybody in here has a phone. Does anybody have a Windows phone? Good, because they don't make them anymore. How many of you have an Apple device? And you think Apple's going to protect us, we're safe, right? Oh. How many of you have an Android device? Wave your hand. All right, those of you that have an Android, I need you to stand up. Oh, I'm going to pick on you now. You got both. So we're going to make you stand up twice. All right, stand up if you've got an Android device. We're going to pick on you. There you go. Oh, those numbers don't seem the same as the people ahead. So, how many of you have your Android device updated to the latest standard? How many have it updated? And if you're linked into a phone carrier, do you have the latest updates? Because you can only update to what Verizon, for example, will push out, right? Do you have a Google Pixel? If you have an unlocked version of something, you can update. But most people are tied to whatever the provider updates. And so if I do something like, you guys can sit down now. Now everybody that's got an Apple, stand up. And it should be the other half of the class. I don't really have anything for you. I just want to make sure you guys all had equal time. All right, set it back down. So if I have an Android device, you can go into the store and you can go buy a Straight Talk device that's got Apple or Verizon, the version 6 out there. And the latest version out is coming out is version 9. And you're way behind in terms of security exploits. The one advantage I really see with Apple devices, I will tell you this, is the Apple Store does a much better job of securing the applications. There are still bad apps you can download, but there are far fewer of them. The Google Play Store? Ooh, the Google Play Store, they have stuff all over the place. If you want to get some shaky apps, you can go on that Google Play Store, get your phone taken over pretty darn quickly. So part of that is use some common sense. The free money app probably really isn't going to give you free money. Hang on a second. Somebody wanted to update my Google listings. So, what kind of things can we do? So whether we're on a phone, whether we're on a computer, are there things we can do to secure ourselves a little bit? Yeah. There really are. And one of the issues we've had with a lot of devices is that idea of default accounts. If your computer is locked behind an account that's called admin with the password of admin, would that be scary? And yet most of your internet routers, that's what you're stuck behind because you've never went in and changed them. Your IoT devices, all of those Internet of Things, your Alexis, your DVRs, all of those things you have connected, your thermostats, they don't have those passwords changed. You've used the default accounts. They are set up not with least functionality. They're set up to be as user-friendly as possible. And that's great, except the world is evil and ugly. We can do this idea of whitelisting or blacklisting. So whitelisting says we allow applications or we allow things to happen. Blacklisting says we block them. So on email, for example, you'll often see controls that say, I need to whitelist these addresses. So those addresses we use all the time will get through. Those that we want to block, we may put a generic block on everything that we don't use. So we have it only using that whitelist. So we may also decide that we need templates. So on Windows operating systems, we can actually get a template of what the best security settings are based on it, like NIST or other governmental organizations, and we may have to put them in place. So here at the college, we're a state organization. We actually have to have some of those processes in place to do that. You're regulated into that. But there's a couple of things we need to make sure we are doing. So, every Tuesday, when you log into your Windows computer on Wednesday morning, have you ever noticed it says, hey, there's new updates? So Microsoft generically calls it Patch Tuesday, and they've pushed them out at other times. But on Tuesdays tend to be the day they send out security patches. So every time they find a security hole, they put updates in place, hopefully. And that's for the ones they find. Now remember, 0 day means nobody's found it yet except for the hacker. And I think we're still going to find those. The OS X, they have updates. Your phone has updates. So a couple of terms you'll see. A patch is just one update. A service pack rolls all of those up into one. So if you update to the latest, who has a Mac in here and updated to the latest? What is it? It's not High Sierra now, it's something else, Mojave. Whatever it's updated to, that was essentially a service pack because you can update it. On your new Windows 10 machines, twice a year they do a complete roll-up with a brand new edition, really. Even though you've still got Windows 10, it actually rolls it up into essentially a new version. So on the corporate side then, we have to figure out how we deal with that. Because I don't want every machine in my company to go out and grab those updates. Why would I not want my computers in a corporate setting to go grab those updates? Why don't I want that? Why would I not want that? It's quiet, like people haven't read the book, haven't thought about this. So think about at work. Where you go to work, do they have software that's on that computer? Is that software guaranteed to work as soon as you do an update to Windows 10? No. What if it doesn't? What if you're at, let's say, Boeing, and there's 200,000 computers, they all do an update to Windows 10 and it kills their ERP or billing software? Oh, that would be a problem, right? So on the corporate side, we usually test those tools and those updates first. So we have a test group, or we have some, in a lot of cases, we do stuff virtually so we can do that. And we'll have tools available in those servers where we can push out updates. We can check to see if they work. If they fail, we can stop them or block them. On the home side, and Windows is getting very aggressive with this, you don't have the ability to stop them. And that may be good because we're going to hopefully patch some things. But if you've got some weird software, you might be in a little bit of trouble. So on the corporate side, so on almost all of our networks, you have tools built into those Windows servers now, or you've added them to them, where you can control when those patches go out. So you manage them yourself. And there's a couple of reasons. A, if they're very big, like the Windows 10 roll-ups every 6 months, you have every one of your users trying to pull that giant update. In other words, you're using up all your internet just for that. So you get to manage that bandwidth a little bit. And you also manage which updates you use and don't use. And there really is a lot of software that will break on these new updates. And so you have to be careful about that. If you're the guy that shuts down the payroll system and 200,000 people don't get a paycheck, nobody is going to be happy with you at that point. So visually, this is kind of what we're looking at. That the vendor, so Microsoft, has an update server, but we actually have our server up here, and we get those updates, and then we push out only the updates that we want or we need. We still may be vulnerable to the issue of a patch that could fix, but the cost is higher than what we can stomach. And getting a vendor to rewrite software can be very, very, very expensive. even for a small person firm, so 50 employees, if you needed something rewritten, it may cost you $10, $20, $100,000 to get a piece of software rewritten. So it's not always an option. There is a real reason why a lot of corporations are still running Windows XP, or they're running Windows 7, or in, God forbid, Windows 8.1, which was out there. There are companies out there still running those because their software won't run or hasn't been updated for Windows 10. So Microsoft, though, used to say to everybody, said, you know, you can put off those updates. No longer. They force you to update on the Windows 10 home side. The Windows 10 Professional or Windows 10 Enterprise, you have the ability to, in most cases at least, delay, if not stop, those updates. So it has changed. It has changed, certainly. So Windows 7 could run forever. What you're going to see now, has anybody in here still got Windows 7? You guys all have new, fancy, shiny stuff. But my guess is, I know some of you work in a bank, and I'm going to guess they still have Windows 7 terminals. Yeah. And here in a little bit, because support for Windows 7 is ending, the last update from Microsoft that's going to come out is going to push out, and they're going to say, here's your last security update. And oh, by the way, now every time you turn on your computer, it's going to pop up and say, you should really upgrade. Well, that's going to be annoying, and I guarantee there will be some vendor that will come out with a way to stop that update. Now, what's interesting is Windows also, or Microsoft is also saying, hey, for an extra $50 a year, we'll provide you some updates for Windows 7. They figured out, you know, we have all these users, we need to make money on this somehow and figure out a way to do that. So patching is one of the most important things you can do, but you have to do it with a plan. So this, for example, is Windows 10 updates. If you haven't been there, it's pretty hard to do. You hold the Windows button, click it, or the little Windows button on the left, click it, and type Windows Update, and it leads you to this screen. You can also find it in Settings. I push this button, and it'll tell me, hey, I have some updates to do. So I can do it on this machine over here, and I can say Windows Update. And in fact, this one says, hey, you've got an update, but it has not restarted yet. And in fact, I said we have those 6-month updates, those big cumulative ones. Right there is a cumulative update, and that updates it to version 18.03. And so when this computer restarts, it's going to actually have a slightly different version of Windows 10. We can also, in there, you can see the updates that you've patched in already. So on your own computer, you can go Update History. It will click. We can get the mouse in the right spot. Or maybe, there it is. So this computer we redid last year. So it was a fresh install last year. That's all the Windows updates. This is all the updates for Microsoft Windows Defender. So you can see that it's got 50 of them. Other updates, so all of those have been installed on this machine since it was installed brand new. Update history. This was successfully, the first version of this was out 9/4/2018 when we installed it. So I guess it's even less than a year old. There's a lot of Windows updates. And every one of those could stop a problem. Bless you. Bless you. Every one of those could stop a problem. The other side of that is it going to cause more harm than good? And you actually, if you're in that field and you're in the IT department, or even if you're in a small company, and you go, well, I just updated Windows and now suddenly my QuickBooks doesn't work, this is probably what's happened. That patch management, those updates, they didn't fix your issue, they actually caused other particular issues. So what other things can we do on the corporate environment? We're trying to figure out a way to secure yourself, to secure the network, try to protect that data, and try to see if we can come up with a way to fix the world. And so generally, we break this down into 3 different groups. So you buy antivirus, you buy anti-spam, and you buy anti-spyware. So I'm going to look at antiviruses first. There is a difference between a corporate level antivirus and a home antivirus. So the corporate antiviruses usually have some form of monitoring. So I don't just install it on each individual computer. I'm usually pushing it out from some kind of a console, so I make sure every computer on my network has antivirus. I pay a licensing fee rather than an individual cost per unit. But antiviruses have some issues. They're always behind the bad guys. They're always behind them. So the antivirus looks for a sign of a virus, or looks for a pattern, or looks for a file that looks like a virus, but it really only has that ability on those newer viruses. There are over 1 million different viruses out there. You can't check against every one of those. It's kind of like getting the flu shot. Did everybody get the flu shot? No? No. Should. Flu shots are good. Flu shots, though, are a gamble. You're gambling that you're going to get the right mix in there to catch whatever flu is going around. So, just like your antivirus, you're gambling that it's going to get the right thing. They also have some other ones. You may see what's called heuristic monitoring or sandboxing. So, what a lot of times they do is they look for characteristics. Does all of a sudden we installed a file and your computer behavior change? It starts exfiltrating a lot of data. It may go in and snag that particular file. You may also see in some companies, Avast is one of them that's very popular that does this, is something called sandboxing or code emulation. So you download a file, it tries to run it in a virtual environment. So if there is an issue, it will actually make it go away. It'll stop that virtual environment and make the code disappear. Here's one of the problems I ran into with antiviruses. Just like that patch management, can it break software? Yes. So you're a small company, you've had custom-built software. Avast doesn't know about that custom-built software, and it deletes it. Oh, now our time clock management system we bought got deleted. Now our logins are all gone. So you do have to be careful about that, especially in that corporate environment. If you listen to talk radio and some of the journals that are out there, there are some people who say with Windows 10, I don't even need antivirus anymore. And I'm going to tell them they're full of shit. Because there is enough stuff out there, the Windows built-in Defender does not grab it all. And I have seen case after case after case of that. Most antivirus software also checks things like email as it comes in and scans through that. If you walk into a company and they don't have antivirus software, I would be a little nervous and I would get scared and say, ooh, what are you guys doing? Maybe we should talk about this. Does it cost some money? Yeah. So a product that I use, which is actually now owned by Avast, and I will have a disclaimer, I sell that product. I'm a dealer for them on the side. When I sell that to corporations, the cost per year is at about $22 to $25 depending on the options they want. $25 a year per computer. If you have 500 computers, that's a lot of money, isn't it? But it's worth the cost, I think. And it does a lot of other things. It actually will send me a text message if any of my clients get infected, which is kind of a handy feature. So a lot of times I can beat them to the call or have one of my guys beat them and say, hey, I see you just got a virus at 7:03 a.m. And they're really like, wait, what? How did you know? Well, I saw you opened up that email and you clicked yes. You do need Viagra, whatever it is that they clicked on and opened. So The new antiviruses, so there are some really good ones out there, they have that ability to monitor. They'll do patch management. We have the ability to go in and make exceptions for software that we don't know what's going to happen. So we can do a lot of things with that software, more so than you can with your home version. And weirdly, if you've bought an antivirus, if you go buy Avast, you're going to spend 50 to 70 bucks on it for a year on the home side, but again, you're buying in bulk. And so the more you buy, the more licenses, certainly the cheaper that becomes. The worst thing we have is spam. Does anybody get spam in their email? So spam can be bad for a lot of reasons. One, if you click on it, you're going to go off and put your credit card in an unsecure site, and probably they're going to steal your money and never actually give you the hair on top of my head. I've learned my lesson on that one. But they throw out, email is so cheap to generate that I can generate it off your computers by sending out malicious content and take over your computer. I can spend millions and millions and millions of emails out for pennies. We think we can get parts of it. So here at the college, I'm getting, I think right now, about 50 emails a day that are spam. And yet when I talk to our IT, Gene, the head of our IT department, they're claiming that they get rid of 98% of all the emails that come into the college that just go away. 98%. And I see those numbers and I go, yeah, that's about right. Because I administer some email accounts also, and that's about the numbers I see coming in. About 2 to 3% of email is actually legitimate, which is crazy. So we're never going to catch it all. We think we can get parts of it, but we're never going to get all of the email that is bad. So we get part of it. If I could invent an anti-spam filter that was 100% effective, I would have so much money, I would just come into class every day and throw $100 bills at you. I wish I could. Trust me. Trust me. So we get parts of it. So one of the things we do inside of there is that idea of those white and black lists, so approved and non-approved senders. We can block things like file attachments because we know that we can get files that are bad. So PDF files, maybe we decide to block them. Or zipped files, because those can contain things. Can I have a virus inside of a Windows file? Like a Microsoft Office file? A Word file? Yeah. So a lot of times we can block them. Most of the times they have some controls so we can filter them a little better. You can train them to reject emails from certain sites. But email, unfortunately, is not going away. And email can be expensive to filter. So if you are hosting your email somewhere else, that cost per month is usually about $3 to $5 to have anti-spam on there. And that's $3 to $5 per email address. Google tries to do some of it, but I can guarantee on your Google email you are seeing some stuff that is pretty horrendous. Now, the other thing is, the reality is, if you go out and put your email in places it shouldn't be, you're going to get some emails you shouldn't get. So, if you're out there on, what is the cheaters website that I've seen recently again? I keep seeing ads for it even on TV. You only live once, have an affair. I have actually seen that on TV now. If you're clicking on websites like that, are you going to get spam mail? Yes. Yes. So you do have to be a little careful. Don't respond to spam mail. One of the tricks they have now is at the bottom of that spam mail, it will say, if you would like to stop getting this email, respond here. Click here. What that tells somebody, because what they've done is blasted out every possible combination of names they can get at campus.peru.edu, is it says, hey, we've got a live address here. Let's put it in this pile over here to send more stuff to. So this is one of the worst things we can do. And so if you're hosting your own email, a lot of times you will actually buy a device like a Barracuda spam filter. So it is not uncommon to spend thousands and thousands of dollars a year to get rid of spam. And the reality is it actually saves you that much money. Think about how long it takes you to delete all your email every day that is bad. And think about now you're sitting in an office getting paid $37 an hour or whatever you're going to make. Everyone's going to make that when they graduate, right? Okay. Whatever you're making, take that time, and it makes some sense for them to try to remove as much of that as they can possibly get ahead of time. So other things that you're going to see. So anti-spyware software. So usually it's bundled in with your antivirus, but you can purchase separately. So there's some fairly decent ones. Super Anti-Spyware is one I like. There is a company called malwarebytes.org that actually has a really good product. So a lot of times we add these on. And a lot of times these will actually additionally block, not necessarily just a virus, but they'll block some of this spyware that's coming onto your computer. So they may block up pop-ups or pop-unders, which I think the pop-unders are actually more annoying, because then when you close your browser window down, you've got all these things tucked behind there. So we have that idea of pop-up blockers, pop-under blockers. So some way to limit what happens. Now, sometimes we have to make exceptions. So if you're on Blackboard, you have to make an exception for like a test will appear. Well, that's noticeable, but we have all of these things that we need to deal with. And so one of them we can do is we harden our operating system. So in other words, we set it up with as much security as possible. So a couple of things. It's called least privilege. Most Windows accounts are set up as supervisor accounts by default, which is just stupid. If you have to go in and make a setting and change and log in before you can install something, the amount of spyware and things you can get on your computer is reduced probably by half at least. You can't install a lot of that malware. Your operating system says, nope, you don't have the ability to do that. But what it does do is make you have 2 accounts in some cases. So now you have to remember a second password. We can leave out capabilities. So the least things you can do, the better. And you've all seen those. If you've went to what's called a kiosk or you went to an internet cafe, you're limited in what you can do. We block the operating system files, so we use things like Phoronix Deep Freeze, for example, is one we use in a lot of schools and libraries, where we don't allow you to change any of the operating system without logging into a third account, unfreezing the computer, changing it, and then refreezing it again. So when we install that operating system, we may do, there they use the term kernel pruning. I've seen some other terms. What you're doing is getting rid of everything that doesn't need to be on that computer. Everybody doesn't need solitaire on their computer. So we get rid of everything we possibly can to start with. So those devices, we're trying to tighten them down as much as possible. But then, what about all these things we're going to plug in? Ah, shoot. So everything we plug into that computer can be an exploit. We already saw last week or week before when you guys were here, you can exploit keyboards and mice. Well, now we're plugging in digital cameras. You're plugging in your phone. You're plugging in USB drives. You're plugging in maybe a backup hard drive of some sort. Multifunctional devices of all kinds. You're connecting to your Internet of Things. You're plugging in a computer screen. You're like, how is a computer screen going to be bad for me? But a lot of computer screens have a lot of data behind them. If you're using a TV for your screen, now you're plugging in some cases your computer into a device that's got another computer. Is that necessarily safe? All of these things can be plugged in. The absolute worst thing I'm going to tell you that you can plug into your computer right now in terms of security, it's setting up here on a cart right here. It's a multifunction computer. It prints, it scans, it steals your stuff. And yet we find these littered all over the corporate environment. And here's the best part. Most of these are wireless and they don't even turn it off. So I can get to this device wirelessly and I can get into your network. Oh, crud. So I kind of have a game I like to play when I'm running around. So this weekend I got to play it. We were in Denver. And every time I can see that I have a Wi-Fi printer somewhere, I like to print them a friendly note. Just because I can. I don't think I'm going to go to prison for that. I don't do things that I can actually go to prison. I'm kind of keeping it down. But if you have that plugged into your corporate network and you left the Wi-Fi on, now you've bridged those two networks. I can get onto that Wi-Fi, no security required in most cases. And they sell that as a great feature. Hey, you can print off anything by getting close with your phone and using the Google Print feature. Oh, crud. So yeah, so we have to be careful about what we're plugging into our computer. So some of you may have an SD card. Does anybody have a digital camera? Not just your phone? And it takes a little card called a digital card, little SD card. Those can actually not only just store data, you can actually run data off of them. You can also get ones that are Wi-Fi capable. So for my DSLR camera, I actually have a card I can plug in that not only will store pictures, but adds the ability to connect to a wireless device. It's handy, I'll tell you that. But now everything on my camera, I could be compromising my network security because I added in a little device. Great. And they're not very big. It's easy to plug one into devices that you don't realize. Most of your laptops have one. So I'm not so worried about the different standards unless you're going to ask questions about which one you want to do. If you want to do videos on your phone and you need a card for it, you need the highest speed one, or if you're plugging it into like a Nikon D80 or something and you're doing video. But we do need to think about how you protect that data and how you protect those devices. So not only are they insecure, but think about your laptops. Almost everyone has one. I handle your laptop just a little bit. You hand it to me and I slide in an SD card that goes in and grabs everything out of your documents folder. It doesn't take that long to do. So peripheral devices are scary. So external storage. So we think, well, great, I'm going to protect my data because I bought CrashPlan, or I bought Backblaze, or I bought Carbonite. And I've seen all of these guys advertised. And it says, all right, it protects your computer because it backs up everything. But your computer got one of these crypto lockers. You backed up your encrypted files. What does that really get you? And so we need to have some separation of those a little bit. So other things you might see. Cloud-based data. So there's a lot of other ones. Dropbox, for example, iCloud, Verizon's cloud. Wherever it is you're storing your data, you do need to make sure that it's actually safe. In here we have a network server. Some people actually have NASA's at their house. You've probably ran into one of those nerdy guys that's got 400 movies stored on a box in his house. That's that idea of a network attached storage. It's kind of handy. We use it in a lot of businesses. You go buy a Synology box and you plug in 4 drives and man, you can store all kinds of stuff. And you have to be really careful with it. Flash drives are getting bigger. You may have an external hard drive. And all of those are great. But I have to remember, if I bought that external hard drive off Amazon, how do I know that that vendor didn't install software on that hard drive that the minute I plug it into my computer, it's going to start encrypting my files for me? And that has actually happened. I have to be careful. So on the corporate side, we buy external drives. Most of the time they're really handy, but you test them on something else. You don't plug them into the server. Google doesn't go buy a 4 terabyte drive and go, here, let me just plug this right into the main server for Google. So you have to do some thinking about that safety and those security precautions. So, external drives, network attached, cloud storage. We all need to think about where our data is stored. And right now you're going, man, all I have is papers. But eventually you'll have other data. And my guess is if you really start thinking about what you have, things like pictures, documents, are really actually far more important to you than what you would like to think originally. So we need to start thinking about some plans, and that's where I'm going to hopefully start making you start thinking about these devices and scare you a little bit. So I am going to stop off about MFDs. So you need to read the rest of that chapter. Well, the whole chapter would be really good. One thing I want to point out, and so this is an article that came out just the other day. So Congress is going to save us from these Internet of Things devices. And I put a link in there to this. Congress is going to save us. This is the same Congress that couldn't figure out how Facebook made money, right? In their committee hearings. If you want to see something entertaining, go watch Zuckerberg trying to testify to the U.S. Congress. Because most of these people had no idea. But they're going to save us by putting in some implementations, and not because they really care about you, because they want to protect their own butt, right? Because the intent of this law is that the federal government and state governments can only buy devices that are secured. Nowhere in there does it really say diddly about consumers, right? So what you're going to end up with, I think in some cases, is, hey, you can have the home Alexa, and it's $50, or if you need the federal government model, let's give that to you for $600. But, you know, it's only your taxes, right? It doesn't really matter. Why don't we make them all secured and charge $35? Just a thought, just an idea. So take a look at that. And as I say that, I just broke this computer. Great. All right. So for